I come from the same area of the world, kind of. But
Are you doing any special food or anything for tonight to celebrate?
So you were number 51.
working.
Oh no. You're gonna let Bob walk in first. Yes, ma'am.
Megan told me that, and I said, "Is that a gift
Oh, wow.
or a threat?" I'm not sure what that is.
Okay. Okay, so remove item 25 from consent. Once we get to that.
We're pulling 25 off consent.
Sounds like it.
Altogether putting it on regular.
right, good morning, everyone. We will call this meeting to order. It is Tuesday, March 17, 2020. Just a quick announcement for those who are just getting here. We do have a person who is counting the attendees. If we reach 50, then we won't go above 50. We have an overflow room for people who would like to attend a meeting once we reach 50 so that we can be in accordance with the best standards according to the CDC. Okay, so we will invite everyone to stand if you are willing and able, and we will recognize Pastor Pam Mason of St. Paul's African Methodist Episcopal Church for the invocation, which will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
As we bow our heads. Dear God, today we come before you during this Lenten season, praying for all humankind. We center ourselves in the midst of COVID-19, the 2020 census, the upcoming 2020 election. As the City Council agenda is addressed today, each of us is reminded that each life matters, health matters, safety matters, and all are vital to the existence of our community. As our mayor, the City Council, and all staff respond to the rapidly changing pandemic, may sound decision-making prevail and resources be provided. Lord, as the voices of our community speak, our ears are open, so that we may hear and respond proactively together in every community. We pray for a special covering over each person in our city and over our leadership. May we be safe and keep others safe. In Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes of the regular meeting of March 3rd and February 18th. Amended minutes. Is there discussion on the minutes? Is there proposed changes to the amendments? See none, the chair will move approval of the minutes.
Second?
Motion has been made and seconded. Clerk will open the roll. Members will cast the votes.
Councilmember, thank you.
Yeah, just not good.
With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass. The minutes are approved. Madam Clerk.
Proclamations.
All right, I'd like to welcome up Chip Newman and Robert Chavez. By the way, I'm terrible at names, so if I mispronounce your name, please correct me and know that I did not do it on purpose. How are you? I would shake your hands, but we're not doing handshakes. So with this proclamation, we will be recognizing the National Canine Veterans Day. Proclamation of the City of Wichita, founded in 1870. Whereas the connection of our community with the primary task of requesting acknowledgement for the National Canine Veterans Day to assure support to our veterans. And whereas National Canine Veterans Day is celebrated each March 13th in honor of the official birthday of the U.S. Army Canine Corps, formed in 1942, Joseph White, a retired military working dog trainer, originated the idea for the day to honor service dogs who risk their lives for their trainers and for the safety of our military men and women each day. Whereas today, canine forces are an active part of military, police, and rescue duties. Training for each service dog is tailored to meet the demands of the job, so the animal and its handler can carry out his or her duties to the fullest. We salute the efforts of all K-9 veterans and handlers, and whereas the purpose of Project K-9 Hero Foundation is to ensure each K-9 hero is rewarded with health and the way of life that they deserve for their faithful and loyal service. To educate the public on the cost and responsibilities of adopting a retired K-9 hero, and to help cover or offset all medical, food, and end-of-duty costs for retired K-9 heroes. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Brandon Whipple, Mayor of the City of Wichita, Kansas, along with the Wichita City Council, do hereby proclaim March 13th, 2020 as the National K-9 Veterans Day in the City of Wichita, and encourages all citizens to remember the contributions and cohesion of all veterans.
Robert's gonna go first. You ready?
Of course. That way I don't have to.
No, that's fine.
Does that work?
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for giving us this day in honor of our K-9 heroes, the military dog that has served thousands of lives and saved lives, thousands of lives on the battlefield, the law enforcement dog that protects our communities and keeps us safe, the search and rescue dog who finds our lost citizens in their times of need, our service dog who gives us disabled and handicapped more independence, our therapy dog that comforts the ill and elderly, and our companion dogs that give a soldier with PTSD a sense of security. Today we honor the K-9 military and law enforcement, K-9 veterans. Today we honor currently the K-9s currently working to keep America's soil safe and secure, and those currently deployed to save lives overseas. And I would just like to thank you very much, Council, and for this beautiful day.
First of all, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, for having us here today. This is very important. The K-9 veterans, you know, the lives they save are far more than what anybody realizes. The police dogs that you have, the same thing. There's a lot of people alive today because of these animals. And this is very important day for us to have. We are actually doing service dogs here that I have here with me today. They are not military or police dogs, but I have talked to those folks and they asked me to be here today to represent them, so I was honored to do that. In the future, I'm certain I can get some of these folks together if anybody would really like to meet some of these heroes. So again, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Did you have? No?
They're just the eye candy.
Thanks, sir. Thank you. Next, I would like to call up Miss Courtney Wage, who is Miss Emerald City, for Women's Appreciation Week. Doing fist bumps today, handshakes. Proclamation of the City of Wichita, Kansas, founded in 1870. Whereas March is the annual declared month that highlights the contributions of women to events in history and contemporary society and underscores the vital contributions women have made in American history. And whereas the Miss America Foundation is the largest scholarship provider for young women seeking to pursue a college or post-secondary education while working to address various adaptive challenges facing our communities through specialized social impact initiatives and transform society. And whereas women leaders in the City of Wichita have worked tirelessly to prioritize the economic empowerment of all citizens through education, policy, and initiatives that enable the prosperity of all individuals and encourages them to reach their fullest potential. And whereas for the past 96 years, the Miss Kansas organization has worked to prepare great women for the world while preparing the world for great women, and has contributed to the academic, professional, and personal growth of Wichita women. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Brandon Whipple, Mayor of the City of Wichita, Kansas, along with the Wichita City Council, do hereby proclaim March 16th through the 20th, 2020 as Women's Appreciation Week.
Thank you, Mayor Whipple and the council members for the acknowledging contributions of women in the city, state, and country. I am the young woman I am today because of the women who came before me and pushed through adversities, seen and unseen, which allowed me to forge my own path. As a member of the Miss Kansas organization and the Miss America organization, the largest scholarship provider for women, I am honored to stand before you this morning to accept this proclamation. The work that we're doing truly transforms the communities we work, live, and pray in. As I continue my personal mission to advocate for the 4.2 million Americans who are blind or visually impaired, I will remember this proclamation as a reminder that our work matters. It always has and it always will. 100 years ago, women earned the right to vote through courage, resilience, and passion. We've come a long way, and with our continued efforts, we will reach the next milestone. Thank you for helping us reach that next milestone. Thank you for helping us with this proclamation for the countless women who will benefit tomorrow from the efforts we put forth today. Again, thank you.
Now I'd like to call up Jean Christian. In recognition of Fine Arts in Our School Month. Proclamation of the City of Wichita, Kansas, founded in 1870. Whereas the City of Wichita recognizes that art education, including drama, music, dance, and visual arts, is an essential part of basic education for all students, providing a balanced education that helps in developing full potential. And whereas the arts enrich the lives of children in Wichita by developing creative ability, self-expression, self-reflection, cognitive skills, discipline, and cross-cultural understanding. And whereas many national and state professional education associations hold celebrations in the month of March focused on student participation in the arts. And whereas these celebrations give Wichita schools and those surrounding a unique opportunity to focus on the value of the arts for all students and to enhance public support for its important part of their curriculum. And now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Brandon Whipple, Mayor of the City of Wichita, Kansas, along with the Wichita City Council, do hereby proclaim March 1st through 31st, 2020 as Fine Arts in Our School Month in the City of Wichita, and encouraging all citizens to acknowledge the importance of the arts in Wichita and surrounding communities. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sean Chastain, Executive Coordinator of Fine Arts for the Wichita Public Schools and Education Chair of the Wichita Arts Council. Fine arts instruction began in the Wichita Public Schools in the 1887-88 school year and has continued, taught by specialists ever since. The greater Wichita area now has numerous elementary, middle, K-8, high school, and special program schools and community organizations, and where students receive fine arts instruction. Wichita Public Schools Fine Arts also sponsors several district events that allow students across our city to perform, including Bandorama, Jazz in the Round, 2 choral invitational concerts, 3 all-city concerts, student and faculty art exhibits, Final Fridays, high school one-act exhibits, in-school Wichita Children's Theater performances, young people's concerts, and Nutcracker field trips. Several of these and other events could not take place without the ongoing partnership of the City of Wichita venues. Botanica offers students to tour in season and even perform on site during their annual Illuminations event. City Arts offers incredible arts classes for youth and even serves as a venue for students to display their art. Century 2, as I mentioned, is home to Wichita Public Schools, All-City Honor Music Concerts, YPC, Ballet Wichita's Nutcracker, and also hosts in-service workshops for Kansas music educators and Kansas thespian conferences. The Old Cowtown Museum, where the Old West comes to life, has also hosted student art exhibits. The Mid-America All-Indian Museum just recently gave students their opportunity to create their own interpretations of 4 Black Bear Bosun's iconic paintings. And the Wichita Art Museum reimburses 100% of the total cost of bus transportation for students to attend the museum. So thank you, Wichita City Council leadership, for the opportunity to celebrate Youth Art Month and for your support year-round. As famed conductor Robert Shaw said, the arts are not a privilege for the few, but a necessity for us all. Thank you.
All right, now I'd like to recognize, or have come down here, Luis Hernandez, as we recognize his service. Luis has been employed by the Water Distribution Division for the past 13 years. Luis has started with the city as a laborer, then moved on to Equipment Operator 1, and then lastly served as a water utility worker before his departure. He has held commercial driver's license for the past 12 years and had a good working knowledge of division practices in City of Wichita operations. And because of this, we are offering you a Distinguished Service Award citation for your 13 years of service to the City of Wichita, and also, excuse me, as I choke, offering you a coin in our appreciation of your service.
Thank you.
You want to say anything?
I appreciate to the city to give me, to God first, and to the city to give me the opportunity to serve to them. I hope I do a good job for my 13 years, you know. I'm glad, I'm happy to serve to the city of Wichita. It's a beautiful city. I live here for 15 years. I love it, I like it. I hope we can make it a little bit safe, because when the city grows, you know, everything grows. Okay, thank you very much.
Madam Clerk.
Celeste Rosette, Save Century 2.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Celeste Rosette, Wichita native. Life as we know it has changed dramatically. Save Century 2 closed their offices yesterday through an abundance of caution. Quality of life has never hit closer to home, health, family, and safety. When James Chung visited Wichita for the first time in 2015, he defined Wichita's alpha factors as first, an abnormally constrained labor market. We have too few people in the labor force for our population. Second, he defined our attitude. We have a positive one towards staying, toward our future, but a less positive one towards our academic institutions. Chung said college education was undervalued in Wichita, and he praised recently built healthcare training facilities, cybersecurity labs, and technical schools. Third, we have chronic underinvestment compared to cities of our size. Project Wichita then started in February 2018 as a response to the Chung report. 14,000 survey respondents identified top strategic issues: create opportunities to retain college graduates, increase educational opportunities for workforce, support career pathways and job development, increase access to quality mental health care, encourage citizen and police collaboration for improved public safety. Wichita Foundation and other groups hired populist architects to sell a vision for making the East Riverbank available for developers. How is this proposed $1.2 billion Riverfront Legacy Plan connected to the top issues identified by Wichitans? Does a new convention center in Wichita increase access to quality mental health care? Do service industry jobs in a convention center or hotel provide educational opportunities for our workforce? What about the groups that were formed to support the issues in the Chung Report? How is the Business Education Alliance doing? Did we meet the Literacy Wins initiative? How is the Wichita Business Coalition on Healthcare doing with community-wide solutions for mental health, substance abuse, and homelessness? Are they ready to address COVID-19 concerns in the homeless population? Are we helping the uninsured? And what about the Anchor Institute models that were formed to connect residents to resources, services, and opportunities? How is that working with medical concerns right now? And public safety. Is our public force and firemen adequately staffed? Is there adequate medical protection for first responders to protect them in this time of crisis? Chung said collaboration with everyone in the community was critical to the success of Wichita, and yet somehow the building of a new convention center, a $300 million underground parking garage, and swimming in the Arkansas River became more important than neighborhood swimming pools, fixing broken streets riddled with potholes, sufficient police, and mental health care for those who need it. Wichita Chamber of Commerce wants you to believe they are committed to James Chung's research, but Wichitans want something other than 400,000 square feet new convention center for quality of life. Riverfront Legacy has not been the all-encompassing collaborative effort it purports to be. It has been a one-sided public relations event to sell the citizens of Wichita on an expensive expansion that in today's economic environment does not make sense. It does not meet the top issues identified in the Chung Report, and the timing is wrong. Convention halls are subsidizing business because they can't fill their venues. The city has big bills coming due, 13 SID districts, 15 TIF districts with outstanding debt of $25 million, and general revenue may be impacted by social isolation practices. Wichita Community Foundation and young professionals claim this is the only chance to make it happen. But those of us who have lived longer know that recessions come and go, and the stock market goes up and down, knows there will always be time. Level-headed Wichitans recognize it is time to hit the pause button on this extravagant development. We are under a state of local disaster emergency. Our new baseball stadium may not open for play, and our new advanced learning library is closed. Imagine if Visit Wichita could pitch in to help Wichita by moving their offices into the former public library and saving taxpayers $300,000 a year for rent. We could use that money to addressing the medical concerns facing us now. Quality of life is safe drinking water and depends on the successful completion of the city's water treatment plant at a cost of $600 million. We have over 11,000 signatures. We're marching towards 12,000 from Wichita registered voters for a municipal initiative petition. It only takes 5,000 signatures to put a name on the ballot for state senator, and we have enough for 2 candidates. Mayor Whipple, Brandon Johnson, Jeff Blubaugh, James Clendenden. We have recently heard of your statements indicating you understand the common sense approach to hitting the pause button on this development and reassessing our needs and what citizens want. We want you to look and act as our representatives to help us have a voice in meeting Wichita's critical needs. Wichita is an all-American city, named one of the coolest cities in Wichita and in America. It was posted in the article in 2018. We did an amazing job hosting the 2018 men's NCAA championships. A new convention center didn't bring those honors. Wichita did. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Ma'am, we have a member who's going to, thanks guys for, we have a member who may have a question. I tried to get that out, but we had people clapping. So you might have to come back if there is a question. The chair recognizes Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. No question, just a comment for the city of Wichita. Project Wichita is still working. There are groups still working at the goals identified in Project Wichita. The anchor institution model is one that we've been meeting on. I serve on that committee pretty regularly. Of course, with the new ban in place, we did not meet yesterday, but we are talking about how we can have an anchor institution model, specifically in Northeast Wichita, that could be duplicated throughout the region. So that's an ongoing conversation. All of the teams from Project Wichita are still meeting right now and still looking at how this can work out. Just remember that Project Wichita was looking at 5, 10 years, possibly even 15. So it's something that is not going to have immediate results, but we're working through that now. Just wanted to put that out there for the public. Thanks, Mayor.
Of course. Madam Clerk.
Consent agenda items 1 through 25.
Madam Clerk, excuse me. Do we not have another person under the public agenda?
I'm sorry, that person is canceled.
Well, if we can go back to public agenda for a moment, I do want to just indulge the council. With the recent rapid movement in response to the COVID-19, there is a member of the service sector who wishes to speak on a consent agenda item, however, not consent agenda, excuse me, on public agenda. However, they did not request the 1 week is required to get onto the agenda. However, they also feel that waiting a week with the rapid movement of our policy decisions in the face of this might be too late. Therefore, I would ask consent to allow this person 5 minutes to speak under the public agenda, but if there is an objection, then we'll move on as printed. Is there objection to allowing this person 5 minutes? See none, the chair recognizes Alex.
Good morning. My name is Alexander Volgamore. That's V as in Victor, U-L-G-A-M-O-R-E. I live at 1105 North Market Street. Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I appreciate your accommodation. Obviously, this last weekend has been a rapidly evolving situation. I have been in almost constant contact with not only business owners and managers, but also employees in the restaurant and business, service sector. And I have prepared a brief statement for you all. Mr. Mayor and councilors, thank you for this time to speak. I want to commend you in the efforts and steps taken in regards to public health. You have taken prudent measures in a timely manner, surely saving lives and giving people a sense of security and direction in these uncertain times. However, I must implore you to take similar measures in regard to economic realities quickly coming upon us. I have worked in the local restaurant industry for 5 years, and over this weekend, almost all my friends and associates in the industry have found themselves without jobs. This is after business owners and managers rose to the task and worked their hardest to keep their employees informed, calm, and most importantly, paid. They stepped up, as did employees, reacting with humanity and compassion to an ever-changing situation. It has been an occasion of rapid action and constant communication, but the occasion has surpassed the sole abilities of business owners and employees. It is time for you to join in this conversation we have rapidly been having this past weekend. 4 days ago, I contacted Mayor Whipple on Twitter inquiring of conversations regarding economic relief, unemployment benefits, and eviction freezes had been had. His timely reply was that they had not yet begun, but that they should involve state leaders as well. According to my understanding of public information provided by the city and further inquiries put to parties close to the mayor, this situation has not yet changed. My friends have lost their jobs. My bosses have exhausted themselves trying to do what they can. Throughout all of this, the largest unknown variable has been, what will you do? I cannot speak to the specific needs and concerns of business owners, as I am not one, but the working class employees need assurances that they will not be kicked out of their homes. They need assurances that our support benefit systems will be there and be ready for them. They need to know you are having these conversations and that they will have answers. People across race, class, industry, and political opinion have steeled themselves and worked diligently in this crisis. Your leadership in the aspect of public health has kept people safe from this virus. It is now also time to work to keep people safe from the economic hardships and uncertainties that are mounting larger and larger every single day. It is time to put a freeze on evictions. It is time to assure people that plans are being made ready and our government systems are preparing to support them. It is time to make clear that their livelihoods and financial well-beings are being considered. It is time to have these conversations. I offer whatever help and support I can and know that there is an entire city ready to mobilize and work together. I have a bit more time. That was my prepared statement, so I'd just like to say some things. I'm very grateful that we are all on the same team. I have been thoroughly impressed over the past week by just the sheer amount of courage and humanity and the responses to everyone involved in this. I think that one of the great positives about this situation is that it has really broken down some preconceived notions or before made opinions that some of us might have had. We have all come together. We've been a great community. We've been strong, and we've done a lot that we can. I've talked to a lot of people, business owners, managers, employees. Everyone is scared, but everyone is moving. Everyone is trying. We have not given into any kind of malaise, but there are certain answers that people really need right now. I have talked to people that I have considered mentors, that I've considered friends, and I have seen great fear and uncertainty in their eyes. People really need to know that if it comes to it, they will not be evicted during this time. There is no way to predict exactly what is going to happen. We only know that this situation is not going to be normal for a very long time. I have a lot of faith in you. I have had many interactions with some of you, and some of you have not, but the city's never done me wrong before, and I don't think it will now. So please begin these conversations, begin thinking about how you can ready our benefits and support systems, how we can expedite things, how we can keep people in their homes, and most importantly, how we can continue the sense of camaraderie and courage and steadfastness with your leadership and the rest of the community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Alex, just want to thank you for coming in and reporting your experiences with us today. And council, I just want to thank you for indulging the chair with allowing a deviation from the printed agenda. And just to your comment, crisis usually either brings out the best in people or the worst in people. And I will put my money on for when it comes to Wichitans, it's going to bring out the best in us. So thank you, sir, for being here. Back to the printed agenda, Madam Clerk.
Consent agenda items 1 through 25.
Discussion of the consent agenda items, I believe we have to, is it number 25?
Yes, if I could request that a motion be made to move item number 25 to planning agenda number 2.
Chair will make a motion to move item number 25, the consent agenda, and have it placed under planning agenda in item number 2.
Second.
Chair is, the motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? See none. With that, clerk will open the roll. Members will cast their votes. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion passes unanimously, and item number 25 will be removed from consent agenda. Back on consent agenda items 1 through 24. Is there discussion on consent agenda items? Is there amendments? See no discussion on the items. Chair will make a motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 24.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded by the Vice Mayor, Councilmember Claycomb. Members will cast their votes. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass unanimously. Madam Clerk.
Report of Board of Bids and Contracts dated March 16th, 2020.
Good morning, welcome.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council. Melinda Walker, Purchasing Manager. For engineering, we have sanitary sewer to serve Travel Air City for $44,042.50.
Ma'am, if I may, can you pull the microphone closer to you for the, thank you.
From Donlinger and Sons Construction, awarded to the engineer's estimate. WDS to serve Warmer Plaza, Second Edition. Recommend Dutton Construction and Plumbing for $36,790. Sanitary sewer improvements to serve Warmer Plaza, Second Edition. Dutton Construction for $42,352, awarded to the, subject to the City Council approval of the new engineer's estimate and budget authorization. Paving 29th Street North and Mays Road intersection, Pearson Construction, $380,344.50. For water distribution system to serve Edgewater Addition, Meese Construction, $43,125. For the Plant 3, gravity influent pipe and manhole, recommend all bids be rejected. For purchasing, we have the sedans, SUVs, cargo vans, and pickup trucks. The detailed information is in your packet. We have Davis Moore Automotive for groups 2, 8, 9, 10, 12, 14, 16, and 17. Don Hatton for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 17. And Rusty Eck for 3, 4, 9, and 11. And these are vehicles that are be under our annual contract. We have combination high-pressure sewer cleaner for custom truck. Base bid $482,000 with options 1 through 7. Installation of network equipment, Harry Street Branch Library for Converge 1 for $28,474.45. We have grounds maintenance services for sewage treatment for Vernon Stolt for $25,550. Hydrogen peroxide for U.S. Peroxide LLC for $551 per contract per ton. We have our open requests for proposals that are on our vendor self-service that are out for the public to put, or for the firms to put proposals in. And if you want to become a registered vendor, you can go to our selfservice.wichita.gov and register to become a vendor for the City of Wichita. Approve the bid, the bid awards as recommended.
Is there discussion on the agenda item? See no discussion. The chair moves that we take the recommended action to receive and file a report, approve the contracts, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by the vice mayor. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast their votes. With a result of 7-0, the motion does pass unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Public hearing and issuance of industrial revenue bonds, Steel Shady Way LLC.
Welcome and good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Tim Goodpasture with the City's Office of Economic Development. For the record, the item before you today is a request for the issuance of multifamily housing revenue bonds for Shady Way Plaza Tower. Steel Shady Way LLC is a real estate holding entity that was created by Steel Properties, which is a Denver, Colorado-based investor in senior living affordable housing. Steel Shady Way is acquiring Shady Way Plaza Tower Apartments at 1421 North Spruce near the intersection of 13th and Grove, which it intends to rehabilitate. The City Council approved a letter of intent to issue multifamily housing revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $11 million on December 17th of 2019. This aerial shows the location of the facility. Grove Street is running top to bottom, roughly halfway through this aerial, and 13th Street is running left to right, also halfway through this aerial. The area outlined in red is the facility for Shady Way Plaza Tower Apartments. The facility is a 100-unit apartment complex for low-income seniors and disabled residents that was built in 1979. It has received few upgrades or renovations since that time. The facility is covered by a Section 8 housing assistance payment program, which subsidizes the resident portion of the rent. Steel Shady Way intends to renew this HAP program for an additional 20 years to ensure that residents continue to receive this subsidy. In addition to its acquisition costs, Steel Shady Way intends a $2.5 million renovation program, which includes addressing ADA requirements, bathroom and kitchen renovations, exterior painting and landscaping, installing hardwire smoke and CO2 detectors, as well as new refrigerators and ranges in all of the units, among other improvements. These are some exterior photos of the facility. These are some photos of some of the units, and these are some of the common areas of the facility. Steel Shady Way has applied for 4% low-income housing tax credits through the state of Kansas, which requires the use of bonds. The bonds will be used for a sales tax exemption as well as achieving tax-exempt financing on the facility. No property tax abatement has been requested. The bonds will be placed privately with KeyBank National Association. Therefore, it is staff's recommendation that the City Council close the public hearing and place on first reading the bond ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of documents for the issuance of multifamily housing revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $10.5 million for Steel Shady Way LLC, and authorize the necessary signatures. The developer had intended to be here today, but obviously with everything going on with the coronavirus, we indicated that it was not necessary for them to be here and told them they did not need to fly in from Denver to be here as part of this. I would be happy to stand for any questions.
Questions for the conferee? See none. Input from the public? See none. Discussion will come back to the bench. Is there further questions on this item or discussion? See none. The chair will therefore make the motion for the recommended action to close the public hearing and place on first read the bond ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of documents for the insurance of industrial revenue bonds in the amount not to exceed $10,500,000 for Steel Shady Way LLC, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Is this your district? I owe you one. You can make the next motion. It does say district.
It's his too.
Oh, my goodness. You definitely gotta make the next motion then. My apologies. So for those who aren't sure, if it's in the member's district, they're supposed to make the motion, and I think I just kind of rolled through. So my apologies to the good council member from District 1. But there has been a motion and seconded. Clerk will open the roll, and we will cast our votes, and I will buy the member from District 1 a coffee later. Get ahead of myself. With the result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass. Madam Clerk.
Resolution setting a public hearing for consideration of a project plan tax increment financing for the project area 3B plan.
Good morning, Mayor, members of the City Council.
Morning and welcome.
Mark Elder with the Office of Economic Development. The item for you today is a request for to set a public hearing on April 21st for a consideration of a project plan for Project Area 3B, which we'll get into in a moment of the area. Just a little history on the Center City South Redevelopment District. It was originally established in 2007 with 13 areas that are identified for potential project areas. The catalyst for this was to be part of redeveloping downtown. There are 3 current projects with the Exchange Place, Block 1, and Napster Park. This is a map of the entire Center City South TIF district to give you perspective of where we're talking about today, which is 3B. That's the area highlighted in red there. As we zoom in, you can see a little closer. 3B is the northeast corner, Broadway and Douglas. And the project will be occurring mostly on the north side there. You may see that hashed area there. Those are areas that are within the district, but they're excluded from the project area due to tax abatements on those properties currently. The private development that is catalyzing for this redevelopment project is a $75 million private investment that includes the redevelopment of the former state office building into the Kansas Health Science Center, redeveloping the former Sutton building to 119 student housing units that support that Health Science Center, Broadway Plaza into a 119-room AC Marriott hotel, as well as this is outside of the project area, but still a project that's part of this overall, which is revitalizing the Henry's building to a commercial kitchen and culinary school. Project Area 3B itself, with the TIF project, is the rehabbing of Chester I. Lewis Reflection Park. That'll be mostly constructing updates with just repairing and replacing the pavers, opening up the park as a gathering space, but it's still going to retain the historic and cultural elements. This project, as it moves forward, will have public hearings as far as for the design of the park, and will involve the different citizen groups that have an interest in how this park is put together. There would also be an acquisition of a portion of land that's to the east. The owner of that building will be demolishing that building, retaining a portion of that for their development, and the rest would go to the city to expand that park. There's also a portion of this project plan that includes supporting infrastructure if there are funds available. I'll get into that here. With the project plan having a proposed $1.3 million in TIF bonds, those would be guaranteed by the developer of this project, and they would all be for that acquisition of the building and the revitalization of Cheshire Lewis Park. There is an additional in the project plan, just $1 million of pay-as-you-go that is really in there as if these projects create a greater increment than what we need to pay those bonds, and if the city sees additional public infrastructure that's needed within that area, then that additional TIF revenue could be used to make additional improvements. Just a real quick photo of what the park looks like today. And then I've got two examples of concept-only designs. Again, this will still go through a design process and will involve public input, but just to give an idea of how the concepts that were currently proposed with the redevelopment there. Again, this is just a resolution that would set the public hearing for April 21st, but I will stand for any questions.
Questions or discussion from the bench? See none, we'll open it up to questions or discussion from the public. See none, conversation will come back to the bench. Is there further questions or discussion? If not, the chair will recognize Councilmember Johnson of District 1.
Thank you, Mayor. I know we're just setting a public hearing, but this is a great opportunity for the Chester Lewis Reflection Park and to really kind of honor him in a way that we haven't to date. And I'm also excited working with Troy that his family's involved with this as well. So looking forward to seeing what comes of it. With that, I would move that we take staff's recommended action.
Motion has been made
Second.
and seconded by the Vice Mayor. Clerk will open the roll, members cast the votes. With the result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
Creation of Section 11.60.225 of the Code of the City of Wichita requiring mufflers for compression engine brakes.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Good morning and welcome.
I am Jan Jarman. Is that better? Jan Jarman, Assistant City Attorney. I'm here on behalf of the Wichita Police Department to talk about an ordinance. As our city limits have grown, semi-trucks, tractor-trailers have come into contact with more neighborhoods than ever before. We have a number of neighbors who are experiencing the ill effects of engine compression brakes, which I know always as Jake brakes. That's a name brand, so you can't put that on a sign, but that's kind of what I know them as. And they are disturbing, especially because these trucks operate very early hours. So during sleeping time, you get that beating, very loud noise, and also a lot of vibration from it, and it's disturbing our neighborhoods. Kansas statute actually has a statute pertaining to engine compression brakes. They don't ban them. A lot of cities have chosen not to ban them because they are necessary in certain types of terrain. They are useful to semis on hills. And so it's not a situation where you would want a truck not to have them. We would just rather they not use them in the city or that they have a muffler on them. So Kansas state statute has required, as a lot of states have, that these trucks have mufflers on their engine brakes. We didn't have that ordinance in the city. So while there is a state statute for that, the Wichita Police Department was unable to enforce it in the city limits because the easiest way would be to write a ticket And you can't just write a ticket to district court. You have to present that to a district attorney who then accepts the cases, which is why we have the city ordinances, because it's so much easier to be able to write a ticket and send it directly to municipal court. So really all we're doing is asking this council to create a city ordinance that looks exactly like our state statute. And with that, I'd stand open for any questions.
Chair recognizes Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jen, will this require any additional signage at city limits to notify of this ordinance?
We don't have to, but I think it'd be a great idea. We plan to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments for the conferee? See none, open up to questions or comments from the public. See none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Councilmember Bluebog.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a couple of comments. I appreciate staff looking into this. This has been a big deal along the South Maze Road corridor. I've heard about this for several months just because we have so many residential roads or residences that run right up against Maze Road. And I hear people 2 and 3 blocks in can hear that when these jakes are running. So I appreciate us looking into this and trying to come up with a resolution.
Other comments? See none. With that, the chair will make a motion to recommend, take staff's recommended action to place the ordinance on first reading and authorize all necessary signatures.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Clerk will open roll. Members cast their votes. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
2020 COPS Hiring Program Grant.
Mr. Mayor, council members.
Welcome.
My name's Christian Corey. I'm the lieutenant of the Domestic Violence Sex Crime Section for the Wichita Police Department. I'm here to talk about the 2020 COPS Hiring Grant Program. Just a little background, this is a program that we've applied for and received funds for in 2009, 2010, and 2016. They've had millions of dollars awarded over the country to support programs like this. Currently, staff has approved this program, and we would have to pick up the cost of this program and fund the positions for 12 months after we receive the grant for the 4 years. In February, through the domestic violence, we ran a pilot project for the month. We focused on strictly domestic violence crimes, focusing on our repeat offenders, getting help to our victims, and focusing on those offenders who are continually harassing those victims. Officers would coordinate with DV detectives daily, and we addressed potentially lethal situations, felonious crimes, and once again, the repeat offenders. We had some interesting numbers coming out of this. This is 2019. We just happened to run a project the year before where we picked up DV offenders, and we saw a decrease. This was just a temporary project that we happened to run. It just happened to be the year before. This year, it was a much smaller version, but we again saw the same correlation in the numbers as we ran the project. This was just 2 officers a day, approximately 5 hours a day, hitting the repeat offenders. We received a lot of positive feedback from the victims and violated multiple probationers and parolees for these offenses. Here's a financial analysis of what the grant would look like as we would be required to pick up the final year. I apologize for that. We have some numbers off there. This would be from 2020 to 2023, not in reverse. So, and the recommendation, of course, is to approve the hiring grant program and authorize the signatures.
Questions on the to the conferee? See none. Questions or comments from the public? See none. Discussion will come back to the bench. Further questions, comments, or motions? With that, the chair will make a motion to take staff's recommended action to approve the grant application and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second by the Vice Mayor Claycomb. Clerk will open the roll. Members will cast their votes. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
General obligation note sale.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Mayor and members of the City Council. Sean Henning, Director of Finance. The item before you this morning relates to a general obligation temporary note sale. Just to provide a little bit of background related to the sale of temporary notes, we typically issue notes to provide short-term financing for projects that are in progress. Generally, the notes mature in 6 months. There are circumstances where we sometimes issue notes for a 1-year term. Notes are retired using either cash, bond proceeds, or other sources. Just as a reminder, this is a calendar of this general obligation note sale. In February, we requested that the City Council authorize the sale. On March 4th, we received ratings from both of the credit rating agencies we utilize, Moody's and S&P. On March 12th, which was last Thursday, we conducted the sale and awarded the bid. Today, we are asking for your consideration to ratify that bid, and we will have closing on the notes on April 15th. The notes that we sold were Series 300 in the principal amount of $26,875,000. We received one bid, and that bid was awarded to TD Securities at a rate of 1.52%. I think everybody is aware of the continuing volatility in the financial markets. And with that volatility, there are often times where investors move to treasuries and safer securities or cash. As a result, the one bid that we did have was closely analyzed by the city's financial advisor, and the bid was determined to be in line with what we consider to be current market conditions. To provide a little bit of comparison, the rate on the notes that we sold with a 6-month term had a rate of 1.52%. The most recent note sale that we had was in October of 2019. However, that had a 1-year term, and we received a rate of 1.3%. More comparatively, we sold notes a year ago in March of 2019 with a 6-month term and received a rate at that time of 1.68%. Recommended action this morning is to ratify the award of the bid, adopt the note resolution, and authorize the necessary signatures. And I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Questions from the bench? See none. Questions or input from the public? See none. Discussion will come back to the bench. Is there questions, input, or proposed amendments? See none. Therefore, the chair will recognize Councilmember Clendenin of District 3.
Sure.
This is general. Oh, I was looking at the second one. See, now I'm paranoid. I'm going to miss someone's district.
I'm happy to make a motion.
You get 2 in a row this time. Go ahead.
No,
apologies.
Mayor, I recommend that we ratify the award of the bid by the city manager, adopt the note resolution, and authorize the necessary signatures.
Second.
It's been seconded. Clerk, close the roll. Members will open the roll. Members will cast their votes. With a result of 6 yeas to 0 nays, this does pass unanimously. And I have to tell you that after fumbling, District 1 actually wrote District 3, James Clendenin's name really big, but under this one, but I actually meant it over the next one, which is in your district, so you're on deck, James, or Councilmember Clendenin. Madam Clerk.
Relocation of sanitary sewer line under Interstate I-135, excuse me.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. Gary Jansen, Public Works Engineering. The item before you this morning is a request for approval of a design concept for relocation of large diameter sanitary sewer under I-135 south of Pawnee. Just some quick history of where we've been with the council and working with staff and our consultant to this point. In January of 2019, the City Council approved a design contract with Garver for development of an alternate routing analysis and cost estimate for relocation of this critical asset. Funding for this project has been in the capital improvement program for some time. Based on the age and condition, a few other factors I'll talk about, we are recommending moving this up a few years so that we can move forward with the project sooner than later. On February 19th, we held a neighborhood meeting to discuss the project. There wasn't a lot of attendance there, but the ones who did come to the meeting were generally in support of this recommendation. And then on March 4th, DAB 3 provided a unanimous recommendation for approval of what you're going to see today. So there's a lot of information on this slide, and I think I can walk you through it. But I want to talk about the existing facilities, a portion of this that's already been replaced. So if you start at the upper left, where I-135 and Southeast Boulevard comes together, you can see labeled, if you look closely, wastewater treatment plant number 1. We've talked considerably with council over the last 2 years about replacing the force main between plants 1 and 2. That project is substantially complete now. The force main is in service. It was a commitment that the council made within the CIP also to replace aging infrastructure that serves this same basin. This is the blue line then going to the north is existing pipe that's still in place. This is a 78-inch diameter pipe. Keep in mind that's a 6.5-foot diameter pipe. It's been in place since approximately 1954. It's served us well. This pipe specifically serves the majority of the Wichita core of what we would call probably the 1970 city limits, which is now well over 60% of the city itself, comes through this asset. As we move to the right, again, the blue pipe is the one we're going to focus on today, and I'll come back to, that's still in place. If you follow to the north, just north of Blake Street, you'll pick up a pipe that's orange. That orange pipe was the existing facility that was in place till about 2012. If you drop down to the bottom of the screen and keep following the orange all the way to the right, the orange and blue combined was the pipe that was built in 1954, as I mentioned before. That was before Interstate 135 was there. Approximately 10 years later, KDOT came in and built the interstate over the top of the sewer. We found an old agreement that basically showed that the city and KDOT came together at the time, decided to leave the sewer in place, and access facilities were built. Some of those were accessible from the Wichita Drainage Canal. The manholes that access the blue line that we're talking about today, what's left, are actually over off of the shoulder into the ditch. That presents some challenges in and of itself. Just getting to this facility has become a bigger challenge as we've gone over time. So if you go all the way to the bottom right, you can see the track there at Wichita East High School and the interchange of Kellogg and 135. And if we start coming back left, the pink and the yellow was pipe that we've already replaced between 2008 and 2012, approximately 2.3 miles. It was relocated to the east side of 135. We made the decision at that time, based on a condition analysis and several other factors, including the fact that we had multiple crossings of storm sewer that went through the sanitary sewer pipe, creating an issue potentially for blockage. There were quite a few factors that went into that analysis. The funding was included in the CIP at that time to move forward. So the pink and the yellow is relatively new facility that was relocated out from under 135. The existing orange facility was abandoned in place and filled. Good thing to get it out from underneath the highway. And I might make note that all of that new pipe is primarily through a residential area. I'll talk about a little bit more in a moment about how we've helped accommodate that. So we've got approximately 1 mile of existing sewer main left, again in the blue from Blake down to treatment plant number 1 under southbound 135. We know we need to replace this pipe. It's 70 years old. We know it's in poor condition. It's a little bit of a challenge to know exactly what shape this pipe is in because it's under constant flow. It's one of our bigger interceptors, and again, I talked about it serves almost 60% of the city. One of the things I will tell you, we just discovered within this last week or two, I mentioned the force main that's been replaced between plants 1 and 2. We now have cleaned out the existing pipe that did the same thing between plants 1 and 2. It was built effectively at about the same time. It's the same material. It is in better shape than we had anticipated, which is good, so that we know we've still got a little bit of time here, but we still need to move forward just to be sure, based on the age, the condition, and some problems we've had with the same type of pipe material in other parts of our system. Hope that made sense. Again, we've replaced the north 2.3 miles. We've got a mile left. This is the biggest part of the pipe, really the most critical part of that asset. So we needed to decide, how do we go about figuring out where to go with a new facility, whether it means staying in the same area or looking at going in through the neighborhood like we did with the first phase. Garver and our staff spent the last year going through a very thorough analysis. They actually started by analyzing over 70 combinations of potential options. We looked first and foremost about whether you could stay within the I-135 corridor. Maybe moving into the ditch on either side, west or east side, presented challenges hydraulically. We looked at reversing the flow of the line in Blake, which I'll come back to in a minute. We looked at taking a main down Pawnee. Hydraulically, those weren't going to work real well either. What it came down to is if we're going to make some changes here, KDOT and the Federal Highway are not going to allow this pipe to stay under 135 anymore, and even if they were, it's really not in our best interest to leave the facility there long term. I mentioned access, which has become a big challenge. Even if we know we've got a sound pipe, trying to get to it is really not worth trying to stay there. We looked at lining the existing pipe. There's a lot of technologies these days that would allow that to be done. Again, KDOT most likely would not allow that. It got to be where it was not going to be cost effective. It was going to be cost prohibitive and really high risk, because what happens with lining a pipe like this is we have to bypass over 60% of the daily sewage that goes through that pipe around the system while we're lining it, which becomes very costly and very risky at the same time. So we ended up looking through this risk analysis that I want to talk more about, finding the best route we could through the adjacent neighborhood. This is a lot of information. It took me a while to wrap my mind around this, but Garver developed a risk analysis that they've used in the past that we think was a tremendous way to look at this and really break down multiple factors and items that go into a facility of this size when you're trying to find a place for it, because we're talking about taking a large diameter sewer through a residential neighborhood. After that initial evaluation, again, I talked of 70 plus combinations. They were reduced to 17 for detailed evaluation, and this includes quite a bit of our staff, both on the management and operations side. 7 individual scores within the Garver office evaluated these different options based on multiple factors, and I won't go through a lot of those, but they looked at economical, social, and environmental impacts. Each person weighted those how they thought was the most important. Those could be constructability, impact short and long term to adjacent property owners. We've got impact during construction. We've got impact of having a interceptor sewer within the street right away when we're done. That also includes, we expect this to be in place for a long time, as long as the system is operable. So we've also got to be able to have access to the facilities, look at long-term maintenance impacts, and what's really going to serve the citizens of Wichita the best in the long term. After evaluating all of those scores on this risk analysis, basically, the part on the left, I know you can't see that, But some of the items on there are driveway access, when local streets are closed, access to freeways, operability, overall length, obviously cost. If we impact tree removal, things like that, that have a sociological or economic impact to the neighborhood, those were considered. So those 7 people all weighted the 17 options based on those factors. And you can, on the far right is the average that came out of evaluating every one of those factors. We went through this too, some with our staff, and pretty well came to the same point, which is the option that I'm going to show you here in just a minute. This was very innovative. This is something that Garver used in the past. It's something that we would look to do again, and we think it really got us to a good point. So coming back to a specific area that we talked about before, just as a quick reminder, the blue pipe is the existing pipe that's still in place. If you go to the far right where Blake Street is, I talked before about one of the options we discussed was reversing the flow on that pipe and taking it back to Southeast Boulevard. We don't have the grade to make that work. We talked about a main going down Pawnee. We can't make that work hydraulically either. As part of this design, we've got to provide long-term efficiency and make sure we can provide the flow that's needed well into the future. So the purple that you see is a recommended option. By taking a main down Southeast Boulevard, we're going to be able to remove the pipe from Blake Street. And what it does for us, with current design methods, current pipe materials, and more efficiencies, we can actually take a 48-inch diameter pipe through that neighborhood, which is considerably smaller than the pipe that's under 135 right now. This is the option that we looked at with the neighborhood with the DAB. We are as we move forward, pending your approval today, we are looking at options for odor control. That was something that we looked at for the first phase. As I mentioned, on the east side of 135, we are going through the residential neighborhood there. We can seal the manhole lids. There's things that we can do with construction, again, with new technology that will help considerably with odor control. And we want to do everything we can to minimize impact, again, during construction. We think this is a really good route. I think the process that we used with Garver's assistance and their model is exactly what we needed to come to the right conclusion here. What's next then? Again, pending your approval today, we would be working on plans, final plans through next spring. We estimate bidding the project in the spring of 2021 with a construction start right after that. So I talked before about the risk analysis for the new route. We still have to consider the risk involved with the facility staying in place till the new one is in service. So we have a contingency plan that we've put in place that we are working on that is nearly complete. It could be put in place right now if we needed. What that contingency plan does is identifies necessary resources if there's a blockage or a failure within any particular section, and that's even broken down such that in any one section, we know where the bypass pumping has to happen. We know the equipment and the people that are needed. We've identified local contractors who would have the resources available to help. Needless to say, these types of things never happen at a convenient time. So we're looking at incident management, what an incident management plan might look like in the meantime. I think this is a great plan to have in place. It's something that could be implemented by exigency if needed. But I will mention one more time, based on the condition of the existing force main between plants 1 and 2, we feel more comfortable that we've got the time to get this built, but we still need to move forward on this proposed schedule. We will have a public information meeting then with our contractor held prior to construction, as we always do on our major projects. So I mentioned back in January of 2019, the council approved an initial design contract with Garver. The recommended action today includes approving the final design contract with them for just under $2.4 million, bringing the total design contract to just over $2,800,000. Back in October of 2018, the council approved an initial budget of $500,000. We were requesting $3 million for completion of design, easement acquisition, and staff oversight at this time, for a total current budget of $3.5 million. So real quickly, I'd mentioned that the CIP had included funding previously for $20 million in the years 2023 and 2024. What we are asking for today is a capital budget adjustment to provide funding for $3 million in 2020, and then the future project costs will be revised in connection with the 2021 to 2030 CIP, which is currently under development. The amended project costs and the revised timing were accounted for in the most recent cost of service analysis and will not impact current rates that have been approved by the City Council. So, with that, and I appreciate you bearing with me, we ask that the council approve the supplemental agreement, the revised budget, amending resolution, authorize the necessary signatures, the capital budget adjustment, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Questions? Vice Mayor Playco.
Thank you. Oops, I think.
That's fine.
Okay.
I'll wait.
Thank you, Gary. I just have a question. This moving this up in the CIP, what that will mean is that some things that were in the CIP this year will move to later when you make that adjustment? Is that how that works?
Not necessarily, because when the last cost of services analysis was done for the most recent rate increase, we predicted that this may need to be done at that time. And so the current rates support moving this up without making any other adjustments.
Okay, thank you.
It's something we'll have to continue to analyze as we go through the CIP, but right now it looks like we can make that happen without moving anything else.
Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Gary, just to be clear, this $3 million, is that on top of the $20 million? Or
It's part
as part of the
It's
20
part
million?
of. And thank you for clarifying. We're still looking at a total overall project cost of just over, it's about $20,250,000. We need to make one adjustment. We've got cost. I talked before about abandoning the existing pipe. It's fairly expensive to do that effectively, so we've got costs here at the end of this project also to abandon this existing pipe and make sure we don't have long-term issues under the highway. And so we're just over $20 million, including that.
All right, thank you.
Other questions? See none questions or input from the public. See none, discussion will come back to the bench. The chair, there is no further discussion from the bench. Chair will recognize the council member from District 3, Councilmember Clendenin.
Thank you, Mayor. Gary, thanks very much for the work you've already done talking to the community and getting out there and answering questions, and for your presentation at District Advisory Board. I really consider this a project that's a city project. I know it runs through southeast Wichita, but you know, approximately two-thirds of the city is affected by this project. So thanks for your diligence in making sure this gets done properly. That being said, I'll take the staff's recommendation. The City Council approve the supplemental agreement and revised budget, adopt the amending resolution, and authorize the necessary signatures and capital budget adjustments.
Is there a second? Motion has been made and seconded. Clerk will open the rolls. Members will cast their vote. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass unanimously. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Funding agreement with Sedgwick County for Housing First program.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, honorable mayor, members of council. I'm Sally Stang from the Housing and Community Services Department. Today I have for you the funding agreement with Sedgwick County for the Housing First program. In 2006, the city and Sedgwick County Commission authorized the task force to end chronic homelessness, and coming from that was a recommendation to create the Housing First program. Housing First is designed to provide permanent housing to chronically homeless individuals in sites scattered throughout the community through rent and utility assistance payments. The program costs are split evenly between the city and the county, and the city administers the program out of the Housing and Community Service Office. Since the program began in March of 2009, we've had almost 400 participants placed in housing, and 193 of those have exited the program successfully. Successful exits include increasing household income so they can pay their own rent, moving closer to family, receiving a Section 8 voucher, moving to public housing, a myriad of opportunities. We have had 132 participants who have exited unsuccessfully through program violations or incarcerations. To date, right now, we have 57 current participants in the program. The 2020 adopted budget includes the rent and utilities subsidies in the amount of $382,736, with $191,368 to be contributed by both the city and the county for the program. And we are recommending approval of the funding agreement and authorizing the signatures to move forward. I stand for any questions.
Other questions from the bench? See none questions or input from the public. It's a light day today. See none, bringing discussion back to the bench. With that, it appears that this doesn't fall directly into anyone's district. Therefore, I will make the recommended action to approve the funding agreement and authorize the necessary signatures, which is staff's recommendation. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by the vice mayor. Clerk will open the roll. Members will cast their votes. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Approval of offer for 2120 North Hoover Road for the Northwest Wichita Water Facility.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning to you, Mayor and Council. I'm John Philbrick, Real Estate Administrator for the city. The item before you is seeking permission to make an offer to acquire the property at 2120 North Hoover Road. And this is in support of the new water treatment facility that is being constructed in that area. Back on December 3rd, 2019, the City Council approved the development of the Northwest Wichita Water Facility. The subject property is immediately adjacent to the new facility on the west, and the acquisition of this site is required to more efficiently develop the new water facility. The site is 5.3 acres in size. It is currently developed with a 425-unit self-storage facility. As I noted before, it's immediately west of the 70.6-acre water site. Here's an aerial that shows in purple where the site to be acquired is located, and then the red is part of the new water facility. We are using some state and federal monies in the development of the water facility, which means that we have to follow the Uniform Relocation and Acquisition Act. And pursuant to the rules of the act, we have had the property appraised and that appraisal reviewed, and that has established just compensation at $5.4 million. This amount will be offered to the owner, and if there's any negotiations, any settlement in excess of the $5.4 million, that item will come back to council for approval. Because we have state and federal money in the project, all the displaced occupants will be eligible for relocation compensation. The acquisition of the site will allow significant enhancements of infrastructure and also allow internal operational efficiencies once the project is fully developed. It is recommended the City Council approve the offer and authorize all necessary signatures. And with that, I stand for any questions.
Other questions? See no questions from the bench. Is there input or questions from the public? See none, discussion will come back to the bench and the chair will make just kidding. Chair will recognize Vice Mayor Claycomb because this does fall under her district. And then, of course, Fry jumps on the list. Sorry. Councilmember Fry. You know, we took a week off from this, and I don't think I'd be this rusty.
Out of practice.
Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's important that we hear from Alan King, Public Works, to share to the public why this property acquisition is so important to the efficiency of the plant. It's a big dollar number, but it has serious implications for how we operate this plant. I think you have a quick presentation or some talk about it.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Fry, Alan King, Director of Public Works and Utilities. The reasons why this property makes sense for the development of our Northwest Water Treatment Plant is First of all, just in routing the major pipeline that takes the raw water from our sources, Cheney and the Wellfield North, to getting it to the treatment plant, we save about $4.2 million with this site, being able to use this site for the routing. It takes a couple of crossings out from underneath Zoo Boulevard, and that's always attractive because anytime you have a large diameter pipe under a major road, there's some liability associated with that. And then finally, by moving the administration building where it was contemplated, which is considerably further east to this site, what it does is it eliminates about $2.3 million in earth and construction costs associated with siting it there. And then perhaps another real important reason is because the property that we would have built the administration building on, it's an amount of property that it would take, this administration building would have taken a considerable amount of, and that really reduced our options in the future for constructing more treatment processes, because this plant is going to be lasting for decades. And so recognizing that there is the potential for more water treatment processes that may need to be built, this gives us a good, reasonable amount of property to site those improvements on by moving this administration building over to the property that we're talking about. Another good reason is that the administration building also houses the lab, and there's a lot of traffic between the processes and the lab, and it puts it right next to where all those processes are instead of a kind of a car ride over to where the administration building would be. It also takes traffic off of 21st, which is really more of a residential grade kind of a street, takes big heavy traffic off of there for the delivery of chemicals and materials and fuel, for example, and instead let's access occur off of Hoover. And then finally what it does is this building will be a public-facing addition to our treatment plant where people can come and have an interpretive center, maybe even host meetings at, and it'll be at a much more obvious and public-facing location than tucked away back on 21st. So for that and a few other reasons, like potential cost savings on easements if we were to have to acquire them, this property seems to make a lot of sense.
No, I appreciate that. I think general public could look at the site and see 70 acres, and you got all the room you need, but for the reasons that you just stated, it's very important why this property is worth the investment. So thank you for sharing it.
Is there any other member who wishes to speak? See none, the chair does recognize the Vice Mayor, Councilmember Claycomb.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to take staff recommended action. City Council approve the offer and authorize the necessary signatures.
The chair will second. Motion has been made and seconded. Clerk will open a roll. Members will cast their votes. With the result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass unanimously. Madam Clerk.
Grounds maintenance contracts.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council. I'm Gentry Thiessen with Park and Recreation, and I'll be walking you through our grounds maintenance contracts. So the department is responsible for the grounds maintenance of over 5,000 acres, including parkland, right-of-ways, turf areas, and landscaped areas around city buildings and in Old Town. In 2010, the city outsourced those functions, and since then, contracts have been rebid 4 times. In 2016, staff began developing a performance-based contract model with the What Works City teams and project management staff out of the city manager's office. I'll go ahead and tell you a little bit about what the What Works City initiative has done for this performance-based contract model. So organizations provide expert support to enhance the use of data and evidence in the private and the public sector, benefiting transparency and community engagement for the city. And support on this has been provided by Johns Hopkins and Harvard universities to create this RFP for the contract model. The most recent contract expired at the end of February of this year, so it's imperative that we approve the contracts for the upcoming maintenance season. A part of the What Works City's contribution to this was refining the desired outcomes and identifying what city properties into groupings to improve efficiency. So with the most recently issued RFP, there were 117 property groupings, and vendors could submit proposals for all of the properties or just some, depending on the service levels that they could provide and the best value offered. The 2020 contract had the following changes and specifications, including self-inspections by the vendors with time-stamped pictures that were failing to produce the desired results. And so in the last bidding period, we've decided to focus on in-person inspections to improve quality. In order to meet our high standards, service levels were modified to focus on mowing rotations. And in efforts to incentivize successful outcomes, vendors that provide exceptional performance outcomes will receive a supplemental incentive payment of 5% at the end of the season. 21 vendors submitted proposals, and of those, 17 were interviewed by a staff screening and selection committee made up of staff from within our department, finance department, and law department. The committee recommended contracting with 9 separate vendors based on their proposed strategies, pricing for the best value, and the most efficient outcomes for the city. The proposed term of the contract is through February 28, 2021, with an option to renew for 2 consecutive one-year terms. Of the 9 proposed contracts combined, the initial baseline cost will be $2.8 million for standard services. However, costs are subject to vary due to weather circumstances like last year's really heavy rains in the spring. And perhaps they will also be affected by the 2019 COVID-19 outbreak, or 2020, as every function of the government is susceptible to its effects, and our vendors have to protect themselves and their employees as well in this time. And as was written into our most recent continuity of operations plan, we will be in close communication with our vendors on the progression of the current situation. Potential costs are expected to remain within the $3.1 million adopted budget of the 2020 budget, even with the potential incentive payments. This money will come from the general fund to the Park and Recreation Department, and potential savings costs of $300,000 could be given if we're able to stick within the baseline costs. All 9 separate contracts have been approved as to form, and it's recommended that City Council approve the contract and authorize the necessary signatures. We believe that we've had a very successful bid for these contracts, and the outcomes will be cost savings and improved services for the city. I'll stand for questions.
Vice Mayor Clayco.
Thank you. Thank you, Gentry. A couple of questions. The change to in-person inspections, who's going to do those in-person inspections?
It's my understanding that park maintenance staff will be.
Okay, so our staff.
Yes, performing those with the vendors.
Okay. And then how many of these 9 vendors, are any of them new vendors?
I'm not sure. Troy?
Chair recognizes Troy.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Troy Houtman, Director of Parks and Recreation. I do believe we do have some new vendors. I think we have 1, but for the majority, we have the same vendors that we've used in the past. They are very familiar with our parks and the system, and so we relied on them, and they've been doing a great job.
Yeah. And then, do you know, are there businesses that were doing business with us and are not, that didn't make the cut this year?
That's correct. Yes, there are several that were not able to provide us with good bids, and there's also several that decided not to bid at all.
Yeah, okay, thanks. You know, one year I sat on this committee and actually went through this process. It is a very complex process, evaluating all of the properties and all of the vendors, so I appreciate the work that the committee did.
Yeah, mowing, you never thought would be so complicated.
Yeah, I know. I agree. Thank you.
Councilmember Bluebach.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Kind of the same lines, Troy, and you may be able to answer these for me as well. You know, we've had a lot of complaints in the past, a lot of them around the Auburn Hills Golf Course. How will complaints be handled in the future where we have constituents coming to council or coming to the Parks Board?
So very similar to what we've done in the past, we hold the contractors responsible for their performance, and that's why we're doing on-site inspections, and we have a rating system in regards to how well they do. If and when they can't perform, we will perform for them and actually get the job done so we can meet those standards, and then they'll have a reflection on how they are rated in the future. But we have taken calls into our Parks and Recreation Department, also through other several means of communication, and when we do have a complaint, we go out there and address it as quickly as we can.
Are there any financial repercussions for the contractor if we have to go in and finish the job?
Yes, there is. Yep. But for the most part, they're pretty small and punitive, but they will not get paid for the work that we do, obviously.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? See none. Input from the public or questions? See none, discussion will come back to the bench. Whose district is this? Looks like this falls under all, so this is me. So if there's no further questions or discussion from the bench, then I will make the motion to take staff's recommended action to approve all contracts with the vendors and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by the Vice Mayor, Member Claycomb. Clerk will open the roll. Members cast the votes. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass unanimously. Madam Clerk.
2020 Economic Development Services Agreement.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mayor. Scott Rigby with the City Manager's Office. Today, we're here to talk about business service contract with Kansas Global Trade Services. Kansas Global, as affectionately as they're often called in the community instead of a longer name, is designed to promote and facilitate international trade, education, communication, research, and assistance throughout our region, our community. They provide this through the global marketplace to provide introductory opportunities for our local companies to find expert opportunities. They do promotional campaigns, language classes, seminars, trade missions, presentations as creating that awareness. In 2015, Kansas Global was the primary lead in developing the South Central Kansas Regional Export Plan. It was a 5-year implementation. They were the lead on implementing that plan, and that was completed this past year, 2019. As you remember, similar to the WEBA contract that was discussed a couple of council meetings ago in 2019, we, the City of Wichita, took an effort to combine our numerous business services contracts under the Greater Wichita Partnership umbrella, and so that was, Kansas Global was wrapped into that. At the end of 2019, as we mentioned previously in our WEBA discussion, the partnership declined to continue to be the master contract holder. At that time, staff, in considering how to move the community forward and the importance of regional export efforts and such, we're such a heavy dependent export community, how do we continue to provide that service out into the Wichita market? So staff is proposing a new contract with Kansas Global. So under the 2020 proposal, the Community Export Acceleration Plan contract would focus on machinery and metalwork and plastics and composite subsections and will be targeted, as well as other priority sectors such as aircraft maintenance, repair, and overhaul, or affectionately known as MRO. We think that's a great opportunity as you hear going through the Spirit situation of how do we get beyond just manufacturing the original part, but how do we work on those planes or work on that aircraft manufacturing after, I kind of call it, everybody needs to get their car oil changed and repaired after they initially buy the car, and that's what aircraft MRO is. Professional engineering services and tech may also be engaged. The core focus of the pilot program is designed to accelerate exports. Again, we are an export-focused community especially with our aviation manufacturing taking place. Each component that we'll discuss is needed from outreach to international trips to training and coaching. The quantified activities within each function that we'll discuss here has been estimated to obtain results, but activities and resources may be needed to be shifted amongst the 3 programs to achieve desired outcomes. The desired outcomes are listed below here. Number of first-time exporters engaged in this program. So how do we get those companies that may be thinking about getting export? How do they go about that? How can we provide that introduction for them as they explore that? Number of markets identified and entered by those companies for the first time, and then obviously aggregate value of those increased exports by companies engaged in this program. I'm going to go quickly through these because it's quite extensive, but there's 3 primary areas. The first is export outreach and industry recruitment. The objectives are to identify new companies with the capacity for exporting, identify those opportunities for those companies as far as where they could be successful and provide that export coaching. As mentioned here, the goal is to have at least 30 meetings with companies here in the Wichita area to explore that, to do in-depth research with those companies to determine where their best opportunities for success is and how do they start down that road. The second is industry market expansion or trade shows. This is to work with companies to scout export opportunities for these companies, select these firms that are best ready or most ready to enter the export market. There may be some that are still early in the process, might not be quite ready for this this step, but to identify those companies that are ready to take that next step forward and actually go into the export markets. The goal, as you'll see this, is to hold at least 2 focused conference or trade missions with at least 2 companies in each of those trips for a minimum total of 4 companies participating. Again, the goal is to work with each of those companies to get them ready and then to actually take those companies out on either trade missions or trade conference visits. Just continuation is of the core problem that we have found for some of these companies is just their comprehension of how to enter the export market. How do they find the necessary resources and access to those available resources to enter the market? And then how do we work to overcome those challenges and have them be ready to do that? And one of the ways is that, as Kansas Global has identified, is to do a company commitment. So it's not just work with us and we'll provide all the resources, but they are actually signing on, as you see, a $1,500 copay to get them enrolled in the program. It's a 12-month commitment. Kansas Global will work with them, kind of like a work plan to get them ready and then ultimately to take them out on trips. Again, further definition of what the Export Accelerator Program is to get those companies to the right places. Just in conclusion, the 2020 contract funding is for $150,000. That would be provided out of the EcoDevo Fund. And it is recommended the City Council approve the contract with Kansas Global Trade Services. Karen Page with Kansas Global Trade Service, the President and CEO, is here. We can also answer any questions if you want to talk about past performance with the export plan or looking forward. We stand for any questions.
Questions for staff?
Mr. Mayor, if you wouldn't mind, I think Karen has some comments she'd like to make as a supplement to the presentation before we get to questions.
Of course, Chair O'Leary. Karen, good morning and welcome. Good to see you.
Good morning, Mayor and Vice Mayor and City Council members. Thanks for all you're doing. I know that these are challenging times for everyone. I wanted to start off by advising you that our staff has decided to work remotely. We're fortunate that we don't have to be like you all do in person to do our jobs. So we have had our first staff meeting on Microsoft Teams yesterday. I advised staff that's our new office. We all miss each other, even though it was only over the weekend, because we work, really enjoy working together as true work family. So just wanted to let you know I'm happy to be here, and we'll continue as best we can working virtually. I also wanted to mention, I was at a presentation, probably the last one of 50 or more people I'll go to in a while, for an economic outlook last week on Wednesday, hosted by UMB Bank. And they had a couple of really well-known economists and analysts that were trying to predict our economic future, which was quite informative and thought-provoking. And one of the things that they said was how important exports are to our national economy. So I wanted to begin my presentation with reminding you that about 25% of the Wichita economy is dependent on exports. About 15% of the Kansas economy is dependent on exports. And as we work together to come through these challenges that we're experiencing today with COVID-19, it's going to become even more important that we work with small businesses and continue to provide support to the business community, especially when you look at exports and growing and prospering our economy. Because I don't know everyone, I put this slide up just to remind me to tell you who we are. We provide guidance to Kansas companies on how to go through the process of international trade. That's the gist of what this slide says. Guidance, we're guides. We get them to the right folks at the right time, provide them with the right information, provide them with strategy, provide them with answers, how to fill out documents, etc. I thought it might be wise to give a little bit of information on what we did as the primary stewards of the implementation of the region's 5-year export plan. The total investment was $1.2 million. We have reported confirmed new export sales of $36.2 million. Let me explain to you what reported confirmed means. They came directly from the companies. It's only a fraction of the companies that were reporting, and the reason that it's only a fraction reporting is because it takes a while to get exports. We don't keep badgering them for years after we provide the service, so we just get the first initial sales, R2 is what we're recording there. So you can bet that despite any massive disruptions, those numbers will continue to grow. So those companies, when they first sell into a new country, that's just the first time, and they'll continue to do that year after year. I think you made a really good investment. We take our accountability and stewardship of public dollars very seriously, and that's why the extreme reporting on the accountability here. So for every 3 cents, it translated into $1 new dollar of export sales. How do we do it? We met with over 300 unique companies. We helped companies almost 700 times. So when I say that different than meeting with a company, that's like someone calls us, someone emails us, they follow up with us, they ask questions, and then we provide them information and answers. We actually had over 600 meetings over that 4-year period. It was a 5-year plan, but given the implementation times, is really 4 years of work. And we provided over 700 referrals. So you can see these numbers is numbers, but I think this speaks to our commitment to accountability. We're really tracking the quantitative, not just the qualitative. So it's not just me up here telling you that it works, but giving you some quantitative numbers. So what did our region gain? $36 million in new exports using the U.S. Department of Commerce formula basically translates to 216 new jobs, and we supported over 34,000 jobs in those export numbers. 20 new countries, those companies confirmed entered. So what's next? We're going to take a deeper dive, and I'm calling it a suite of export help. During the export plan, we intentionally looked at what worked, what was working, and what didn't work. If it didn't work, we tweaked it and tried again, and if it still didn't work, we threw it out. So I always like to tell people, I think a lot of people say a plan is no good if it's sitting on a shelf. Well, guess what? A plan is also no good if you just stick to something that doesn't work. So during the export plan, we very intentionally, looked at what was working, what was not working. The results are that today, added to that with a best practices and benchmarking exercise at the beginning of last year, where we talked to the top export divisions in the nation, both at the city level and the state level. We've come up with this suite of export help for you. So what we know is that you have to customize services to the company. You have to meet them where they are. You have to focus your group or public efforts on sectors and subsectors of particular industries. And then you have to match those subsector needs to global demand and global drivers. So what you're going to see in 2020 is sector and geography focused programs, bless you, tailored advice per company, and intensive coaching and training. And I won't go into a lot of detail here because Scott Rigby really did an excellent job of providing that detail, and I think it's also in your agenda packets. What that means is 30 meetings. It'll probably be quite a bit more, and I don't want you to think I'm sandbagging, but we really tried to think about what was required to get this done. We need to meet with folks to tell them about the Export Accelerator Intensive Program. We need to meet with them to select, and we need to meet with them to coach them and train them, hold their hand along the way. So really will probably be a lot more than 30 meetings. It just depends on what we need to do to get the job done. We'll do 2 trips, what those, maybe a trade mission or a conference or a sales trip will actually be trips to foreign countries. And then we'll select 5 export-ready companies. So these won't be necessarily new, never exported before. They have to be export-ready. They have to have a solid foundation from which they're working. And we're going to ask them to work with us and complete a 12-month program. We'll be checking on a lot of metrics within each of those 3 levels. But the overall outcomes is the number of first-time exporters engaged in this program. We'll be identifying those through those outreach meetings, and number of markets identified to enter for the first time, as well as the aggregate value. Aggregate value means we'll ask the companies after they complete the process or after they finish their engagement with us, did it result in any new exports? We'll tally that, we'll add it all together, and we'll report out. That's my conclusion. Any questions? I'd be happy to answer.
Councilmember Tuttle.
Thank you, Karen. Great job. I appreciated the information. I just have a quick question. With everything going on, not just here, right, but across the globe, do you think that the goals that you've set for 2020 are still, do you have a plan or do you have thoughts? I mean, we don't know if this is going to go how far into second quarter. Just what are your thoughts?
Councilmember Tuttle, that's an excellent question. When was negotiating with city management, we took that into consideration as best we could a couple of weeks ago. And so one of the things that we've asked for is, given that today's March 17th and we're well into the first quarter, that the contract be for 12 months, quote unquote, but will we be allowed through the end of the first quarter of 2021 to complete this? Okay. So thinking about a little bit of a delay to start, also thinking about no one's traveling right now, and to the best of my knowledge, we're probably going to be able to do that again in the fall or end of the year. Cross fingers, hope and pray. So we've calculated that in. That said, I started out by saying we're working remotely. So we have a global network of partners that we're working with. We already talk to them on a regular basis, and we're not traveling to Italy to do so. Sure. So I think that you have my commitment and a commitment from our staff to look for alternate ways to connect companies. Those trips are really important because it allows the company time to get face-to-face with someone and say, here's how good I am, buy my stuff, right? But we're gonna have to look at alternatives. Actually, a few years ago, we worked with the U.S. Department of Commerce and came up with a sort of staggered approach to help small businesses avoid the expense and time of travel. And I think that we're going to be doing more virtual meetings to try and accomplish the same thing. It's an excellent question.
Well, I just want to make sure I'm trying to be empathetic that, we need to be realistic with there's a moving target now. Things are changing every day, every hour. So thank you.
Are changing every hour. I think at least to the best of my knowledge and ability, at this time, this is still realistic. Again, a plan. This is the plan. If it needs to change, I'll be communicating with management.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Karen and I also discussed the flexibility in the agreement, and so that she has the ability to move resources from one activity to another. So should we have a long delay in our ability to travel, that she can move money into the other two activities from our total contract amount.
Perfect, thank you.
Other comments or questions?
I just have a comment. Thank you, Karen. I know that we all know exports are important to Wichita and to Kansas, and I also think that recognizing that economic development sometimes takes time. So the 5-year export plan and this accelerator program. But I think that I appreciate today you showing us, demonstrating that you have a track record. And with this new accelerator program, I think that we'll see the benefit of that also. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Karen, I just wanted to say thank you as well for all of your work and also educating me on things I didn't know about. So thank you for that.
My pleasure.
Did you? No? Okay. Other questions from the bench? See none. Thank you, Karen. Are there questions or comments from the public? See none, we'll bring discussion back to the bench. Further questions, or discussion, Chair recognizes Councilmember Clendenin.
Karen, I'm going to thank you, but you can stay back there in your seat. Further away, the better, right? I just want to say I've seen Kansas Global work over my 8 years on this council, and the amazing work they've done at educating this council and the community about how 25% of our economy being dependent on exports is a huge amount for a community, and our commitment to having an export plan and having Kansas Global Trade Services do this is extremely important to the community. So I want to thank you, Karen, thank you for all you're going to continue to do. And if there was any doubt on this council, let this council know I think this is probably one of the more important things that we'll take up this year.
Councilmember Bluebog.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And my thoughts are, last time we went through a recession and Kansas Global was instrumental in going out there and training companies that weren't currently exporting. And, your numbers are outstanding on what you've done. And hopefully we're not in that situation as a country again, but I appreciate your forethought and planning, and I know you'll do the best to look for alternative solutions like you have in the past. So thank you very much.
Other questions or comments? See none. With that, the chair will make a motion to take the staff's recommended action to approve the proposed 2020 Economic Development Service Agreement for Kansas Global Trade Services with an effective date of January 1st, 2020, and authorize the necessary signatures. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by the Vice Mayor, Member Claycomb. Clerk will open the rolls. Members will cast the votes. With a result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
PUD 2019-13, city zone change from single-family residential to planned unit development to permit office, warehouse, and other commercial and residential uses on property generally located 450 feet west of North Mays Road and approximately 1/4 mile south of West 21st Street North.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor, City Council, Scott Knable with the Planning Department. The item before you, as was mentioned, is a request for a planned unit development, which is a special use zoning district that is intended to tailor the use and development standards to unique circumstances that aren't handled by the base zoning classifications. This particular property, you can see in the middle of the box there, states CU 156. Its history is that it was originally developed under a county conditional use back when this property was in the middle of the farmland, and the roads around here and the developments were not in place. That conditional use was for a company called Kirk Excavating, which operated basically a construction yard on the property. And that conditional use remains in place where zoning codes are written. If the conditional uses are not restricted in their time limits, they remain in place in perpetuity. And so the property itself is permitted to do a number of the types of businesses that the applicants are proposing to do, and in some cases are already doing on the site. The applicants acquired this property within the last several years and have been conducting business operations on the site that as of yet are not permitted by the site's conditional use or the SF5 zoning. And so they're seeking this planned unit development to allow them to continue to use the site. There are existing businesses on the site. One's a pet waste removal. That probably sounds worse than what it really is. They don't actually handle the waste at the site, but they park the vehicles that are used in that business at the site. They also do vehicle repair, primarily repair of party buses and golf carts. And then they operate a construction business as well as have some outdoor storage, primarily of personal property, boats and RVs of friends of theirs, although it is a primary use of the site. So this site, or this case has been before the Planning Commission on 2 occasions. On November 21st, there was a pretty significant discussion from the surrounding property owners with a major focus on the access drive to the property. So you can see this property does not have direct access to the street. And if you look at the aerial photograph, there is a driveway that is located along the south end of the 3 parcels that are immediately east of this site that grants access to this site to Mays Road. That access easement is a perpetual easement and grants that access to this site. The primary discussion regarding that access easement at the November 21st Planning Commission was concerns from the residential property owner to the east that has a single-family residence on the site and some other outbuildings that users of the subject property were parking and remaining in that access easement and blocking access to their personal driveway. And so that will, in result of that, the applicant has changed the gate that they have. It's now an automated gate and has provided openers to the people that provide or that store their RVs and boats on that site. The case then went to the District Advisory Board on February, I should say that the Planning Commission deferred action on November 21st to address that issue and a couple of others. And ultimately the case went to the District Advisory Board on February 3rd. They recommended approval of the request and added two conditions. One related to permitted uses, and they were intended to exclude duplexes, outdoor equipment rentals, and vehicle sales, as well as an increase to the height of the privacy fence to 8 feet in height instead of 6 feet in height. That recommendation was considered by the Planning Commission on February 6th. They did not limit or prohibit, I should say, duplexes, outdoor equipment, or vehicle sales on the site entirely. They recommended that duplexes only be permitted if there's an alternative form of access to the site, potentially from the property to the north or the west of the site through cross-lot access, and then allowed equipment rentals and sales, but without outdoor display. So the equipment themselves would have to be displayed indoors. The other thing that the Planning Commission added to the recommendations was a condition to recess the entry gate to 50 feet from the east property line to allow anybody that is coming to the property to be able to stop on the subject property and provide and get in order to gain access without blocking the driveway to the property to the east. You can see that this area is identified in our comprehensive plan as an area where we anticipate that there would be commercial uses, and so it's consistent in that respect. This is a site plan that shows the existing buildings on the site, which is outlined in a bold black line, and then the existing buildings on surrounding properties to the east and to the south. So you can see that there's a number of buildings that are in close proximity. This is the building in the southeast corner of the site, and then on the far left is the building in the northwest corner of the site. You can see that they're predominantly industrial style buildings. This is the site itself is predominantly just open grass space, and you can see that there is some outdoor storage, both undercover as well as open air of vehicles. This is looking at the southeast corner, looking from the site to the south, looking southwest at the site itself, and then this is the property immediately to the east that was expressing the concerns regarding the access easement. This is looking east of the site. You can see some of the buildings in the close proximity of the buildings. The tan building with the sloped roof is on the neighboring property. You can see how it is in close proximity. This is a close-up of that particular building. And then this is looking at that access easement out to Mays Road. That white vehicle is on Mays Road, so it gives you an idea as to the distance between the two. This is the property to the north, which is developed with the church, property to the west, which is undeveloped property also owned by the church, and then to the south is single-family residences on typical lots. So the reason, of course, we're discussing this with you today is that there is a significant protest petition from the property owners to the east and to the south, representing a 41.33% protest, which exceeds the 20% threshold and would require that if the request is to be approved by the city council, it would require 6 out of 7 votes. The recommendation to you today from the Planning Commission is to approve the request that in order to override that protest would require 6 affirmative votes from the city council. Other options that the Planning Commission or that the city council has is to override the Planning Commission and approve the request, but approve it with modified conditions. I know that there's been particular discussion about the issue of the recessed access gate. The council also has the option to deny the request. That would require 5 out of 7 votes, 2/3 majority of the council, and then the planning or the city council could return the request to the city council for reconsideration. Doing such, returning it to the Planning Commission would not remove the 6-vote requirement for the override of the protest petition. So that's just for your information. With that, I'll stand for questions.
Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Mayor. Scott, just quickly, for the record, could you tell us the width of the easement, that access easement?
I believe it's 30 feet is the width of the access easement, if I recall correctly, and I believe the drive that is within that is 17 feet wide.
So plenty of width there.
Yes.
Secondly, if this PUD doesn't get approved, it reverts back to the conditional use, which allows what on the site?
So the conditional use itself, I don't have the exact wording. I do have it in here somewhere, but it'll take me a minute to find it. But essentially, it allows a construction operator's business that would be able to store, construction equipment outdoors, piles of material, those sorts of things.
As well as alfalfa and hay,
yes,
farm
yes,
equipment.
Yes, as well as farming equipment. That is correct, and that would remain in place if the PUD is not approved. Then that conditional use would stay on the property.
I have no more questions.
Any more questions for the conferee? See none. Any input or questions from the public? Oh, of course. My apologies. Thanks for the 3 people who told me that. Vice Mayor Claycomb.
I have one more question,
Sure.
Scott. If the PUD is approved, it overrides the conditional use.
That's correct. The PUD would override both the base zoning of single family as well as the conditional use, and the property then would appear on our zoning map as PUD number 68.
Okay, thank you.
No other questions.
Other questions? Now moving into discussion. Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a unique piece of property. As Scott mentioned, this was countryside, and everything grew up around it, including these homes to the south and the development to the east and to the north. And so to have that conditional use doesn't really make sense anymore. I have been to the property and met with the applicant and looked at the conditions, and I think what they're trying to do is really bring the property into a more appropriate use for low-impact commercial and not have that conditional use that's there. I've met and visited with some of the area folks as well, and I understand their concerns. And I think trying to cobble together a blended motion between what MAPC is recommending and the DAB, as well as my own observation, I think we have a good plan going forward. So I would like that we adopt the findings of the MAPC, including the approval of the PUD text as presented to MAPC with amendments made in response to the DAB, which includes General Provision 2D, which means no outdoor retail display for vehicle sales, General Provision 2E, which the use of duplex is permissible on parcel 1 only in the event that there is more than one access openings available. That the applicant shall clarify the language of General Provisions 2B and 2C with regard to vehicle storage. And then finally, that the access gate to the property shall be open during posted business hours with additional text stating, quote, "For after hours access, call the business telephone number." I think that helps with some of the concern about temporary blockage of the drive without having to put in that recessed 50 feet. That would be an extreme and expensive hardship that I don't think is necessary, providing these other conditions on the signage. So that's, and then finally to authorize the necessary signatures on the ordinance. So that's my motion.
The chair appreciates the diverse motion and therefore will second the motion, which will open up to discussion. Just for clarification, if this motion is struck down, we'll be back on the original legislation in which we can move forward with a different motion, I believe.
Yeah, we'd have to adjust then. Probably have to then figure out a different act.
Right. So, any discussion on the motion? See none. With that, the members cast their votes. The motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Vacation 2020-2, city vacation of a portion of an alley between East Waterman and East English Streets and between South Washington and South Mosley Avenues for safety purposes, generally located on the north side of East Waterman Street and 150 feet west of South Washington Avenue.
Good morning, Mayor, City Council. Scott Knable again with the Planning Department. The item before you is a city-initiated vacation of an alley right-of-way. As was described, it's in the block between Waterman, English, Washington, and Mosley, the northwest corner of Washington and Waterman in downtown. The alley itself is unimproved and provides access predominantly to vacant or undeveloped properties, although there is one used property that is developed with a Quonset hut on the west side of the property, west side of the alley, excuse me. The city has the authority under state law to initiate this type of vacation without receiving the consent of the surrounding property owners and has chosen to do so in this circumstance. Like a more traditional vacation that was initiated by the adjoining property owners, the alley right-of-way itself would revert to the adjoining property owners in the manner in which it was originally dedicated. In this case, the 24-foot wide alley would go 12 feet to the east and 12 feet to the west. The applicant, the City of Wichita Law Department has indicated that the reason for, or the reasons for the request to vacate the alley has to do with the safety implications and the number of traffic accidents that have occurred at the intersection of Washington and Waterman. The fact that the alley itself does not comply with city access guidelines in terms of locating accesses to arterial streets in close proximity to arterial intersections. The intersection of Washington and Waterman is one of the busier intersections in the downtown area, particularly at the peak hour, and there are some major employers who leave their businesses to the northwest here, and rather than trying to pull out onto Washington and getting in line for the traffic signal there at Washington and Waterman, are using this alley to cut through and bypass that traffic signal, which is creating some safety concerns. Additionally, there's improper parking for events, primarily at the Intrust Bank Arena, that is occurring both on this alley as well as on the vacant properties that this alley provides access to. And the intent of the state law as it relates to alleys is that they should not be used for these purposes, particularly for through traffic, which is expressly prohibited as a use for alley right-of-way. Additionally, the city indicates that future development in the area would benefit from approval of this vacation. You can see on this exhibit the property that is on the west that is developed with the Quonset hut. Its only right-of-way access at this point is this alley right-of-way. The recommendation that has come to you from the Planning Commission is that alley right-of-way would be vacated and that the alternative access to the property would be provided through an access easement across property to the north of the Quonset hut property that would provide direct access to English Street. This is perhaps shows it a little better in color here. The green area is the area that would be dedicated as the alternative access route to the property, and you can see then the Quonset hut kind of outlined in blue on this property. This is an illustration of the quarter section map that shows the area in pink and yellow being the area that would be vacated. This is the photograph of the alley looking at the south. You can see that the alley is actually improved as well as English Street to the north, east, and west of this alley. But the alley itself in this location is sand and gravel. This is the property, the Quonset hut property, and this is looking at the area in which they would be granted their alternative access. Obviously, this curb would have to be removed and a driveway installed in order to provide that access. This is looking at the northwest, looking at the development and the parking garage in particular, where vehicles are using this alley in an unintended way. And this is some of the uses on the property immediately west of the alley, as well as the vacant building that is at the west side of the as well. You can see in this illustration that the building, or the Quonset hut building, does have a door on the south and has access to the east of the building to go around that building and take access from English Street to the north. This is another photo, and this is kind of showing the condition of the alley. It doesn't really show in this picture, but the intent is to show some of the parking that has been occurring on the east side of the alley where there's an undeveloped street. We're presenting this to you today for conversation because the owner of the property where the Quonset hut is developed has submitted a protest petition. That protest petition does not exceed the 20%, so the approval does not require the supermajority vote. The recommendation that you have from the Planning Commission is that the vacation be approved, and that can be done with a simple majority vote. That I'll stand for questions.
Questions from the bench? No questions. We do not take public comment on this.
That's correct. There would be.
So I will turn it back over to the mayor for a vote.
Mayor recognizes Councilmember Johnston for a motion.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, Scott. I would move that we take the recommendation from staff and MAPC.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Vice Mayor. There's been a motion and a seconded. The clerk will open a roll. Members will cast their votes. For the result of 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion does pass unanimously. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
If I could, please, I just want to recognize that this was Scott's last presentation to the council, and I want to thank him for all of the work he's done, especially for his coordination of the downtown master plan, and downtown Wichita would not be what it is today if it wasn't for the work of Scott.
Real quick, what's happening to Scott? He's still going to be around?
Scott is moving to another community.
Moving to another community. Well,
work your magic in Derby.
Okay.
We appreciate all you've done. Enjoyed it. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Scott.
Madam Clerk.
Councilmember appointments and comments.
We'll open up to appointments. I will be appointing Don Henry to the Storm Water Advisory Board. I am also reappointing the following members to the Storm Water Advisory Board. George Sherman, Dennis Clary, Hoyt Hillman, Don Kirkland. Are there other appointments? Vice Mayor Clayco. Oh,
Appointments.
we're gonna go in order. So, Councilmember Fry, apologies.
Okay, so I have several appointments, and I've given these to the clerk, so she's already has them, but for the record, Animal Control Advisory Board, Elaine Stephen, Bike Ped Pedestrian Advisory Board, Dr. Russell Fox, Board of Park Commissioners, Bill Ramsey, Cultural Funding Committee, Joe Miller, Gulf Advisory Committee, Richard Schodorf, Historic Preservation Board, Nick Penner, Library Board, Aaron Bach and Randall Johnston, MAPC/Board of Zoning Appeals, Mike Green, Police and Fire Retirement Board, David Kane, Transit Advisory Board, Matt Byram, Airport Advisory Board, Joey Elzey, Wichita-Sedgwick County Access Advisory Board, Nancy Dooling, and for my District 5 Advisory Board, Roman Rodriguez, Jose Gutierrez, Alyssa Unruh, Rachel Thomas Murphy, Troy Palmer, Nancy Dooling, Trevor Kurth, Jill Kirshen, J.V. Johnston, Angela Breer, and Dennis Clary.
Councilmember Johnson.
No appointments. I have a comment. I'll wait.
Vice Mayor Clayco.
Yes, I have, all of these are reappointments. Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Board, Marcia Schrader, Board of Park Commissioners, Ty Tabing, Community Services Block Grant Review Committee, Christopher Cooper Martin. And for my District Advisory Board, Gregory Boyjan, Angela Martinez, Linda Matney, Melinda Kellogg, Sergio Devaro Nahara, William Longnecker, James Deckard, Sean Rojas, Gisela Pena. For Library Board, Jonathan Winkler and Jennifer Goheen. For Police and Fire Retirement Board of Trustees, Gavin Seiler. For Transit Advisory Board, Shannon Bohm and Mika Pakala. Wichita Airport Advisory Board, Dwight Greenlee. Wichita Employees Retirement System Board of Trustees, James Deckard. And Wichita Sedgwick County Access Advisory Board, Sean Beebe. And I will provide a list to the clerk.
Are there any more appointments at this time? Councilmember Clendenin.
I just wanted to mention for staff's sake that I will have my appointments ready and together for next week's meeting.
Me too.
With no more appointments, Chair will make a motion to accept the stated appointments. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Clerk will open a roll. Members cast a vote. With 7 yeas to 0 nays, the motion passes unanimously. Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. First, thank you for your leadership on working with United Way for the one-stop shop. I think that's going to be a benefit to our city. And then second, I just wanted to say amidst everything going on, I know the strength of our city, in my opinion, is our citizens. And no matter what challenge we have, I know that working together that we can find a solution and work through this. This is a tough time right now and taking all the precautions that we are, but I feel it's valuable and I know that we will make it through this. And I just wanted to say that publicly.
Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to echo Councilmember Johnson's comments, but I also would like to thank our staff and city manager for their actions, efforts, and direction related to this. When in time of crisis, it's really great to have a staff that we can rely on. Makes our job easier as policymakers if we've got good leadership from department heads and city managers. So thank you. And then lastly, a shout out to my brother. It's his birthday, St. Patrick's Day. Happy birthday, Brennan.
Councilmember Tuttle.
I just want to take the opportunity again. Thank you to all of staff for all of their exemplary work, especially our city manager and his team, and also to welcome our new Director of Communications. Glad you're here. Sorry it's kind of a crazy way to start your job, but that's how we do things in Wichita. So we're glad you're here, and I'm sure you'll do an excellent job and look forward to working with you. So welcome to Wichita.
Other announcements? If not, I'm just going to close with, as we get information from our partners over at the county or from our partners in the governor's office or national about how to move forward with this pandemic, we will be posting that information in real time as quick as possible on our social media. Please, if you have access to social media, follow the City of Wichita, follow our Twitter and our Facebook. There are a number of members on the bench who are active on social media who also share this information. And if you are someone who is interested in helping, let's say you might have bought too much toilet paper and now you're looking to give some back, the United Way is going to be our one-stop shop for people who are willing to donate resources. They will also be distributing those resources for members of the community who are taking either a self-imposed quarantine or who shouldn't be out because they are part of the at-risk population. Also, if you are a member who just kind of echoing on what Brian Johnson said about how Wichita's strength is its people, if you are a member who is creating a resource or organizing a resource in your community and you are in social media, please use hashtag ICTResponse on Twitter. ICTResponse is going to be the hashtag for our community to post information that is community-oriented, not just coming from your local government. With that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Oh, I have to make a motion for adjourning the meeting. Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Been here 2 months, so in Topeka, the chair can just adjourn at any time. 7 yeas to 0 nays. The motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you all.